Does Top Gun Maverick fly sky high or does it crash and burn? Let's find out now. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Our Pass, and today I'm going to talk to you about Top Gun Maverick, which comes to theaters on May 27, 2022. It is the long overdue follow-up to Top Gun, the classic movie that, I don't know, maybe not a lot of people have seen because it's been a long time. I mean, I saw it, I loved it when I was a kid. Obviously, maybe want to be a pilot, maybe want to fly, maybe want to join the military. But unfortunately, I got glasses. I could never be a pilot. And here I am. But the film itself is a continuation of that story, a long overdue continuation. And my hot take is it's actually pretty good. It's a little mixed. There's some things I didn't love, but overall, it is a really enjoyable theater experience. It has a lot of really great action, really great sound, an 80s feel to it that is both good and bad, but it's also just a fun movie to see in theaters. So I definitely think you should check it out. Check it out in theaters, especially where you're going to have a nice big screen, some really good sound. It really has some really, really impressive action sequences. So I'm going to tell you a little more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and go into the ending. And as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending part. I will try to keep the spoilers to just the ending portion, so you can watch this, get my thoughts, get some vague idea about the film, and then turn it off right when I get to the ending, because that will have spoilers, as you can imagine. So in Top Gun Maverick, you have Tom Cruise playing Maverick, and I actually forgot his real name. I guess his real name is Pete, but everyone calls him Maverick. That's his call sign. He is a legendary pilot who also has kind of an issue with authority. We meet him out in the Mojave Desert. He's working on a top secret plane. He is a test pilot on this plane that's going supersonic. It looks like it even goes into like a low orbit from the test. And he's pushing this plane, trying to get this thing to hit Mach 10. But he gets recalled during this test to go back to Top Gun. Top Gun is this like elite training school for Navy pilots, and he gets called back to teach there. And you're like, what's going on? We find out there is a secret mission that has to happen, and Maverick, as one of the only people that has actual military combat experience, has actual air-to-air combat experience, and just knows this plane better than anyone else, is someone who's going to both plan the mission and teach the mission to some very, very talented pilots. And he starts training them as only Maverick can, and there are some ups and downs that happen because of this. So things I liked about this movie. The first is the action. I've already mentioned it. The action is really, really good. There is just some intense aerial action. As you can imagine, it's Top Gun. There's a lot of aerial scenes. There's a lot of air combat, air flight, and it is very impressive. And it looks real, and that's because it actually is. Like, these pilots, these actors were actually in the planes. I think they were being flown around by other pilots, but they're in the planes experiencing the force, experiencing the reactions, and it looks amazing. Like, they're in the cockpits, they're looking around. You can tell that their faces are getting distorted because of some of the forces involved in the flight. You can tell that they are actually like looking around the cockpit. There's no CG there, and it looks just very, very impressive. There's some really amazing flight scenes that look great, and you don't ever break your suspension of disbelief, which I love. The second thing I love is the sound, and this goes along with the action. There's both great music. There's a lot of callbacks to the original Top Gun music, and there's a lot of really good new music. There's some good classical music to set some of the tones during the missions, but also just the sounds of the action. Like, there are some very impressive cockpit scenes where you hear loud sounds, but then also there's some scenes where you don't hear much. You only hear like the breathing from the pilots, and then, you know, a little bit of the wind noise from the plane. And that is another kind of intense moment, an intense way to just tell the story, where you're just on edge, like waiting to see what happens. And the sound just really contributes to the overall feel of the film and the overall immersion that you get in this movie, which is very, very good. The third thing I liked are the callbacks. There's a lot of callbacks to the original film. As you can imagine, they're trying to both establish nostalgia and tell a story. I mean, the first Top Gun, I guess, came out 34 years ago. There's a lot of people going to this movie that have probably never seen it. So you do get a lot of callbacks to the original film, to original aspects of the story. You get pictures from the first movie. You get some movie scenes from the first movie, some characters from the first movie. And the film's callbacks go so far as, like, the first 5 minutes of the movie are, I think, pretty shot for shot for what happened in the original Top Gun. You've got the same text at the opening. You've got an opening at an aircraft carrier with planes going off, with all the pageantry that happens when you launch a plane off of an aircraft carrier. It does feel great. It feels fun to be back in this world, and it gives you a nice sense of continuity from the first movie. The fourth thing I liked is the 80s feel. This movie definitely feels different from a lot of other movies, from the writing to the intro to some of the plot devices and situations. It definitely does feel like a movie from a different time. It feels like some of the characters are a little more kind of boisterous, and the situations are a little more exaggerated. The writing is a little bit sillier. Like the film feels like a movie from a different time. And I think that's definitely what they were going for. And the last thing I liked is the humor. The film, it's not overtly funny, but it has a lot of really funny situations and lines. There's a lot of scenes that you can kind of watch, and you'll definitely chuckle when something happens. The film is 100% not a comedy. It is definitely an action movie first, but there are enough moments of levity that it both entertains you and also feels like, something from the original movie. Now, things I didn't love as much. The first, and again, like I said, I like the 80s feel. The 80s feel also, I think, hampers this movie a little bit. Like there are definitely some scenes where it feels like it's trying to be a little too nostalgic. It feels like it's trying to pull too much from the original, rather than kind of letting this be its own movie that moves it forward. Now, to be fair, this movie is good. It's enjoyable, but sometimes it felt like they were trying to pull a little bit too much from the original Top Gun. Well, and it definitely kind of repeats over and over. You see the same picture over and over again. You see some of the same situations over and over again. Some of the plot feels very similar to the first movie. Some of the devices do, and some of the the overall storyline does as well. So again, it's not bad. It just sometimes I felt like it was almost too knowing, like they were trying too much to pull that nostalgia out. Second thing I didn't love is some of the writing. This kind of goes along with the 80s feel. So the writing does feel a little too corny. Like it's not overly bad, and there is some very good writing, to be fair, but there are some scenes where the writing does make it a little cringeworthy. Again, it's not too bad. It's still an enjoyable film, but it is something that kind of like felt off at times. And the last thing I didn't love is the ending. And so if you don't want to know what happens in the film, you don't want to know what happens in this movie, turn this off now. So at the end of Top Gun Maverick, like I said, they are on an impossible mission. The mission is to bomb this like uranium refinery, I guess. They're enriching uranium in this facility that is almost too perfect of a place. It's kind of at the bottom of a mountain, or it's at the bottom of a valley with like large mountain cliffs on all sides, and the only way to get into it is like through this very kind of narrow route that lets them go below radar, and also below the SAM sites, the surface to air missile sites. And they have to do this like Death Star type run through this canyon to avoid detection, and then go dive into this valley, drop some bombs on this very small point. I think it's actually a vent. So I think maybe I'm pretty sure this is a Star Wars Death Star callback, but it's basically the same thing. They have to drop these bombs on this little vent and then pull up out of this valley at insane G's to get up and out of this area. And then they have to deal with the SAM sites that now can see them because they're up out of this valley, and also potentially enemy fighters as well. So the mission occurs, but during the ensuing kind of escape and chaos, Maverick sacrifices himself to save one of the other pilots. And that pilot is Rooster, who is the son of Goose. Goose is Maverick's wingman in the original Top Gun, who died during Top Gun when he ejected out of the plane, and the canopy didn't shoot up high enough, and so he ejected right into the canopy, hit his head, died in the film. And Maverick has kind of blamed himself for that the entire time, and also, felt bad for Goose's family, and especially his son, who has to now grow up without a father. And even though the investigation found no fault for Maverick, it was just a kind of a freak accident, Maverick has always blamed himself. So a lot of this movie is him trying to kind of reconcile with Rooster, Goose's son, and also trying to like train him up and get him ready for this mission. But during the chaos that ensues after the main mission, Maverick is shot down, saving Rooster, and they don't know what happened to him. They don't know if he's okay. But the rest of the crew, the rest of the team, the rest of the pilots fly back because like the mission's done. They can't all go back for Maverick. Maverick wakes up in the snow, behind enemy lines. And I was like, okay, what is going to happen here? And then there's like an enemy helicopter that's like tracking him as he's getting up. And it like sees him, it goes around, it shoots at him, he runs and like jumps over. And it's kind of like a behind enemy lines type scene, like type movie right now, because he's basically on his own against essentially the entire enemy army. They don't ever specify who this force is. It's just kind of leave it nebulous, which I actually think is a good idea. It kind of leaves it timeless, in that respect. You don't really necessarily need to know who the enemy is. But as enemy chopper is coming around, ready to, take down Maverick, he has no more cover. It's about to shoot, and it blows up. And you see Rooster flying in to save Maverick, which is also a weird scene because like, what's he going to do? He's in an F-18. He can't like stop and pick him up. He can't like hover while Maverick climbs up into the cockpit. Like basically He can take out anything that's trying to shoot Maverick as long as it's like a very big thing, but there's not much he can do. Anyways, it makes for an exciting scene. He blows up this helicopter, but when he's back in enemy territory, the SAM sites get him, and now Rooster gets kind of shot down. So Maverick runs over to him. Rooster survives, but now it's two of them behind enemy lines, whereas at first it was just Maverick. Now it's Maverick and Rooster. And Maverick actually gets mad at him because he's like, why'd you come back for me? Like, and Rooster is upset too because he's like, I saved your life. He's like, yeah, but I was down and now we're both here. Like, what are you going to do? But in any event, now they're both behind enemy lines. And so they head to the nearest enemy base, which is actually a base that was destroyed during the assault. The Navy like shot missiles into the base to blow it up to make sure that the enemies couldn't scramble fighters to disrupt the mission, which is a very bold move. I don't know if that would actually fly in any sort of normal situation, but hey, it's a movie. It's fine. But anyways, they get there and they see that there is one plane left in the entire airfield. And wouldn't you know it, it's an F-14, just like in the first Top Gun, which is also a little weird because this country has like top of the line planes. Like they're fighting, they call it 5th gen fighters. They are very advanced fighters. In the movie, the Admiral says that like the technological superiority of America is no longer a factor because of these 5th generation fighters. So this country has like the most advanced fighters, and they have an F-14 for some reason. But hey, you know what? It makes for a cool scene to see an F-14 in the air. So let's go with it. Maverick and Rooster get there. They get in the plane. They're trying to figure out how to take off. And wouldn't you know it, Maverick does a Maverick thing. Takes off like a short taxi runway. Just barely makes it. Boom, flies away. But as they're flying, they have to contend with some of the enemies who are now there. There were a couple 5th gen fighters who came over when the initial commotion happened during the mission, and now they see this F-14. But it's an enemy F-14, so they don't really know what to do. So it looks like they're trying to figure it out, and then they start to get into an attack formation, and wouldn't you know it, Maverick, just right before then, boom, goes, takes one out, has a very intense scene with the other one. It's now Maverick and Rooster, just like old days, right, with Maverick and Goose. It's a nice kind of nostalgic scene, except the thing that sucks in this one is that the plane is old and like basically nothing works. So Rooster almost does nothing in this. I mean, he's giving eyes, like he's giving like oversight. He's looking out for the other plane. He's telling them when missiles are fired, but he doesn't like do any targeting. He doesn't do any like countermeasures. He's essentially just Maverick's eyes in the back of his head. But there's a very intense dogfight scene with the other plane, and Maverick eventually takes it down. So you think they're in the clear. They shot down those two planes. They're flying back to the aircraft carrier. Wouldn't you know, there's one more plane that's tracking them. It looks like maybe this is the end for our heroes. They're kind of like head on, but they don't have any more countermeasures. I don't think they have any missiles anyways, but they're basically accepting their fate. But they try to escape. Like they try to get out of there. Maverick tries to get them to eject. He wants them to survive. So he's flying away. He's trying to get them to ejection height, but wouldn't you know it, this old plane, the ejector doesn't work. I thought it was going to be like a parallel to the first movie, but the ejector just doesn't work. So they seem to be resigned to their fate. And just as that, enemy 5th gen fighters about to fire on them, it blows up. And wouldn't you know it, one of the people, the kind of arrogant one, I guess in this movie, the Iceman character whose name is Hangman, very similar sounds, blows up that fighter. He's finally understood the power of teamwork. Everyone's happy. It is a cool scene. Like, I'll give it that. They fly back to the aircraft carrier. Everyone lands. Everyone's excited. You get this like big, happy celebration on the aircraft carrier. Again, this is a kind of a parallel to what happened in Top Gun when they took out the MiGs in like the final scenes. Like, everyone gets back. Everyone's happy. Maverick is the hero. Everyone has learned the value of teamwork and camaraderie. And everyone who had rough edges before, they've now been sanded down. Again, I will give it, it makes it for a very exciting, fun ending. But some things I didn't love about this ending is, it felt a little bit too ridiculous. Like the film itself before, other than like the crazy action part and the part where like you can eject from a plane and not have horrible career-ending injuries, it still kind of is vaguely based in some sort of reality. But then when Maverick's plane gets shot down, and then Rooster's plane gets shot down, and they have to go like take over an enemy F-14 that just happens to be there and fly out. Like that just kind of went a little bit too over the top. Now, again, it makes for a really fun ending. So look, I don't begrudge it that much, but when it was happening, it felt a little bit too much. Also, one of the things I didn't love as well is it felt like this movie had a really interesting drones versus human pilots theme that was happening. They brought it up a couple times in the first movie. They basically said like essentially Maverick is a relic. And the film does a lot to try to show like, oh, like pilots are still important. Like, look at what Maverick can do. But it feels like the kind of automated pilot versus human pilot aspect wasn't explored as much as I kind of thought it would. Like, it could have been an interesting film if they had like tried to train the drones to do it, or maybe like the human pilots had to beat the drones because maybe the drones would have been too slow. So it would have been interesting if they had something like that. They just brought it up a couple times, like, okay, this is gonna be this is an interesting comment on, you know, human versus unmanned warfare, like what the future is going to bring. But other than a few references at the start, there was nothing after that. Then when it went to Top Gun school, you only had human pilots. You knew who the human pilots were. You weren't sure who was going to do the mission, but you knew it was going to be some human. But I thought it would have been an interesting idea to have them, like, maybe, I don't know, compete against drones or have something on why the drones couldn't do it. Because this does kind of feel like a mission that maybe some drones could have snuck in and dropped bombs. Maybe the drones don't have big enough ordinances. That might be it, because they had some pretty big bombs that they had to drop, and maybe the drone strikes wouldn't be good enough. But again, it feels like something that maybe was a bigger idea at some point in the filming, and then they kind of dropped it off because it didn't make for an interesting film. Look, the ending went off the rails, but it was still a fun ending, and it led to a really intense dogfight scene and this kind of like celebratory ending scene on the ship. Like, if they would have just done the mission, all escaped, all flown back, that would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been as exciting as the film ended up being. So even though I didn't love the ending, I think it's still made for a fun theater experience. So that's Top Gun Maverick. It's coming to theaters on May 27th, 2022, so you can check it out then. I definitely think you should check it out. It is a fun movie to see in theaters. It's going to be an exciting one, and it's going to be a really fun kickoff to the summer. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.